Space, the final frontier. These are the voyages of the Starship Enterprise. Its 5-year mission to explore strange new worlds, to seek out new life and new civilizations, to boldly go where no man has gone before. Space, the final frontier. These are the voyages of the Starship Enterprise. Its 5-year mission to explore strange new worlds, to seek out new life and new civilizations, to boldly go where no man has gone before.
Hello, hello. Welcome to Wizard World Virtual Experiences. We are talking about Starship Therapise, using therapeutic fan fiction to rewrite your life. I am Dr. Travis Langley, and I am here talking to Justine and Larissa. Justine and Larissa, who are you people? Tell the audience.
Yes. Hi. I'm Justine Mastin. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, as well as a licensed alcohol and drug counselor, a yoga teacher, an educator, a podcaster, and a writer, co-author of this amazing book.
And you're also a professor now.
Well, I snuck that in with educator, but
Okay,
yes, I'm
cool.
adjunct faculty now at
That's right.
St. Mary's University of Minnesota. That's me.
That's you. And I'm Larissa Garsky. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, writer, researcher, not yet an educator, but definitely a supervisor for associately licensed marriage and family therapists. And I'm the co-writer and co-host of our podcast, which has the same name as our book, Starship Therapise.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and thank you both for being here to tell us about this work. All right, let's back up before the book, before the podcast. There's fanfic. How did you two get involved, take an interest in fan fiction in the first place?
I am going to let my good friend Larissa, aka Spock, tell the story of how she got involved in fanfic, because it's one of my favorite stories.
Oh, sure. Okay, so Justine loves when I tell this story, and sometimes I love when I tell this story. And today I don't have a choice. So the story is this. When I was very young, a very young Spockling, I had 3 great fandom loves in no particular order: Reading Rainbow, Star Trek Next Generation, and The Secret Garden. And of those 3, I had lots of great access to the first 2, Reading Rainbow and Star Trek Next Generation. But Secret Garden, there's just the one book. And at my public library, they didn't have any of the other books by Frances Hodgson Burnett. And so after waiting what felt like forever, and was really probably only a couple of weeks, for a book called Little Lord Fauntleroy, which I have never read, I was like, enough of this waiting. I'm going to write my own, I didn't know it was fan fiction, but I was like, I'm going to write my own sequel to The Secret Garden. And that was the beginning of my experience in writing my own fan fiction.
And that story sparks so much joy for me.
I would have had to write my own ending. When I was in 4th grade, the teacher was reading The Secret Garden to us. It was pretty far along through the book, but then she didn't finish it.
What?
And this just nagged at me. So this is more memorable than anything else she read that year. Why? Because of something we have to be talking about right before this, because I had a Zygarnik effect going on. It's something that is not completed or not completed to your satisfaction becomes more memorable. Yes. And so it just nagged at me, wanting to know, how does The Secret Garden end? It was years before I ever found out.
Wow.
Yeah. And for me, I mean, I am a great lover of fan fiction. I got very into fanfic when I got into the supernatural fandom, where fan fiction is abundant. But as far as therapeutic fan fiction, I didn't even realize that's the work I was doing until, I'd been working primarily as a narrative therapist for many years. And one night, it just hit me. And I literally texted Larissa and I was like, we do therapeutic fan fiction. Narrative therapy is therapeutic fan fiction.
Or the way we do narrative
the
therapy.
way we do it, sure.
Bringing in fandoms.
Michael White and David Epstein would probably disagree, but the way we do it, it's all about asking what if and rewriting the story of your life. Instead of the character in The Secret Garden, it's you.
Right. But if the character in The Secret Garden, Mary Lennox, really resonates with you, in our therapy, we're going to want to bring that character in and maybe use her as an avatar and think about what were skills, abilities. I don't know if she had powers, but in fanfic, you can do whatever you want. You could fanfic her powers and try to think about how can you use those in your daily life to be your own version of Mary Lennox.
All right, so for the audience members out there who have no clue and who have not edited you talking about this, what is narrative therapy?
Oh, that's so legit. So friends at home, there are so many different kinds of therapy, and no one would blame you for not knowing what they are, because you think that there's only like one way to do therapy. Not true. There's 100 ways to do therapy. I mean, probably infinite, but like 100 styles of therapy. The idea behind narrative therapy is that this is the story of our lives, and what is the meaning we make of these stories, and how can we begin to shift the narratives that we hold. So as an example, you might hold the narrative that, you didn't have anybody sticking up for you when you were a little kid. And through some questioning, we might discover that actually there was this really sweet neighbor who you had never identified as being someone who stuck up for you. But through this course of inquiry, we discover, like, actually this neighbor was here for you a lot. And so we get to shift the narrative from no one was there for me to I had this really incredible support person in my life. And that's just the tiniest little toe dip into narrative therapy. A big part of it is that the problem is the problem. The person is not the problem. Like, you, friend at home, are not a problem. You deal with problems. And so you are not inextricably linked with the problem. And another big idea is externalization of the problem. So Larissa and I take that one step further and like to assign persona
characters, if you will, to our problems or our mental health diagnoses. Justine's favorite, well, would you say it's your favorite anxiety gremlins?
I would say it's my most used.
Yes.
Because so many of my clients are anxious. And I just think that gremlins from the 1980s film Gremlins are such a great example of anxiety, because the Mogwai, Gizmo, came with a set of self-care instructions. Don't get them wet. Don't put them in direct sunlight.
Don't feed them after midnight. And don't put them in direct sunlight. Sorry, right. I cut you off there.
It's okay. It's all right. We all want to jump in and talk about the rules. And when they don't get those self-care needs met, they can erupt with these out of control gremlins that sort of take over our lives. And hey, aren't we very similar, that we have our self-care rules, and if we don't follow them, we might wind up with gremlins too.
So why fiction? As if narrative therapy is about rewriting your own life, what does fiction have to do with that?
I love this question from you.
Well, yeah, because I know the answer. What does fiction have to do with that? Come on, shouldn't you be talking about real people?
from the man who like wrote the book on this. I feel like I've been talking quite a bit. Larissa, you want to hop in with why fiction?
Why fiction? I mean, so much of how we understand ourselves in the world is built around metaphor. And particularly when it comes to our emotions and our emotional reality, often the language that is our go-to for talking about our emotions and our emotional reality uses the world of metaphor. And what is the world of metaphor but fiction by another name? What would you add to that, Justine?
What I would add is, you know, we get to try things out in fiction. We get to test stuff out. There, folks at home, there's this concept of mirror neurons, where our brain is making sense of what is happening when we watch a show. You know, if we're emotionally invested,
a person doing a thing,
or another person doing a thing, and we're making sense of it, and we're learning and we're adapting. We're very mimicky creatures, humans, mm-hmm. And we get the opportunity to picture ourselves in this story. What would we do? What would we do if we, you know, if I pulled Buffy the Vampire Slayer out of her story and into my life? How could she help me?
Yeah.
It's what I love about fiction is that it's this never-ending resource of support and information. You know, whichever character you need is available to you. And we're not bogged down by the troubles that real people have, right? We don't have to, you know, Travis, I heard you talk about this recently, about how we don't have to worry about our fandom favorites falling off their pedestals, because in our own minds, they get to stay however we want them to stay. We don't have to accept as canon any part of the story that doesn't work for us, which is so great, because we don't get to do that with mom and dad and sisters and brothers and community out here in the real world. But in the fictional world, you know, I can totally separate Buffy the Vampire Slayer from Joss Whedon. I can do that.
You can.
I don't have to link those two. And so Buffy can keep being a meaningful part of my life, even as the creator let me down a little bit.
Which I think is one of the amazing parts about fan fiction, is that it gives you as the writer choice. Mm-hmm. And it gives you as the fan more choice and control in terms of what are you going to take, what are you going to keep, what are you going to pass back. And these are useful ways of not just thinking about our relationship to characters, but our relationship to the real people in our lives. Mm-hmm. You know, like when we move away from maybe the Buffy the Vampire Slayer and the pedestal and move into maybe a more complicated relationship with a real life person, like a parent or a sibling or a friend. Mm-hmm. How can we learn to sit in shades of gray and maybe be and hold on to those parts of the relationship that we really do love and we really do cherish, while also recognizing that there are parts of the relationship that maybe hurt us or don't work for us? How can we find a way to make space for both while still taking care of ourselves?
Well, we have some greetings from some viewers out here. Alexa Rice says, "Hey guys." Kaylee Kane, good evening. I hope everyone's doing great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, speaking of shades of gray, I've heard that 50 Shades of Grey started as Twilight fan fiction.
Mm-hmm. It sure did. Yep.
So sometimes fan fiction can turn into something else. It turned into her own thing. Whether you like 50 Shades of Grey or not, whether you would ever even open a page, that's a separate issue.
Oh, I've read all of them.
You did?
I did.
I knew you read all of Twilight, but I didn't know you read all the 50 Shades.
I did both. I read all of Twilight.
See, and that's a commitment to fandom, learning about your clients' fandom favorites so you can bring them into session.
Mm-hmm. Well, right. I mean, since Justine heard that Taco's recording the other day, you know, mm-hmm. I mean, I really believe in learning the other person's fandom, whether we're talking about students. I need to know, well, not just, you know, which references I can make that they'll even know what I'm talking about. 15 years ago, even though the show was off the air, I could still say which character on Friends is the most obsessive compulsive, and they all knew. If somebody would say Ross, but most would say Monica. I can't, even though it's like they still know Friends pretty well. I cannot count on them to know it as well. Then now there is no story they all know. And whatever resonates with you is not necessarily what will resonate with them. You need to learn what they're interested in. Antoine Armand wants to know, what is your favorite genre to write fanfic in, and why? Ooh.
Okay. Well, so I've only ever like straight up sat down and written fanfic outside of our book, because there is fanfic in our book, twice. Once when I was a young Kirkling, and I wrote Stand By Me fanfiction because I just wanted more Stand By Me.
Oh, I did. I don't think I've ever heard this story.
The recovery of the corpse. What?
I think really I just wanted more Will Wheaton. I think that's the real story here.
That's fair.
It's like, how can I keep hanging out with Will Wheaton?
And maybe they finally figured out what Goofy is.
Sure.
I'm sorry. Okay, you did Stand By Me fanfic.
I did Stand By Me fanfic.
You do what needs to, resonate for you personally. You do you, and that's it.
That's what was resonant for me at the time. And then I wrote one erotic Destiel fanfic during my time in the supernatural fandom, which I am still in. But I was like, I can do this. And I thought it was just a lovely story. It was, I thought at the time, I think it was season 9, that Dean and Cass weren't getting along the way they should be. And so I thought that Dean really should have snuck Cass into the bunker instead of kicking him out. And I won't tell you the rest of the story, but
no. Is it available?
Yeah, we did not put a mature warning on this.
But as far as what's my favorite genre of fanfic to write, I can now say that my favorite genre of fanfic to write is fandom characters in therapy, because that's what we wrote in the book, and it was so much fun and so cathartic as a therapist and a fan to write my fan faves being in therapy. So that's mine.
Kaylee Kane. I'm a fan fiction writer. I'm also a starting author wanting to release my own books. Any advice? It's not like we've published fan fiction that we're getting paid for. Our books are nonfiction about fiction to talk about real people.
Yes.
Yeah, the way we were able to sneak in some fanfic is so our book is a self-help book. And it's based on the idea that, we can use fandom to improve our lives. And the end of each chapter includes a yoga practice or a meditation inspired by fandom, and then a fan fiction case study. So a short bit of fanfic of our fan faves in therapy. And that's how we were able to get fanfic published. But it's just a little part of the book, but it is my favorite part.
Well, and I would say, like, to answer the question, though we haven't had our fan fiction become the kind of like famous published tome as like 50 Shades of Grey, writing a lot, writing all the time, building a community where you are reading your writing like to others and getting real feedback, whether you do it IRL or you do it by joining actual fan fiction communities, that can be the best way to not just have your writing feel alive, but to have the practice of it, which you need to do almost every day, to have the practice of it be fun. Like, part of what kept Justine and I going when we were writing this book is that we were doing it together. And we would say all the time that we couldn't imagine having to write it alone, because when you're all by yourself looking at that cursor just blinking at you, it can be a terrifying experience. And there would be plenty of times when we would like set our writing date that one of us would be in our Google Doc first, and whoever was there first would like hang out and then like text the other one and say, you need to join me in here. It's scary to be in here alone. Which is why my advice would be invite other people on the journey with you. Even if you're not going to write with a co-writer, have a community of people who's reading your stuff and that you can read theirs. So it is more of that collaborative experience.
Larissa, because I read somebody's comment before you got to your favorite genre to write in and why.
I love writing in genres where it's a community of characters that I want to hang out with. So when I was a kid, I really wanted to spend more time with Dickon and Mary Lennox from The Secret Garden. I've also written fan fiction. I've never published it, but featuring the X-Men characters from the time I was a kid. And that was, again, because I liked those characters and I wanted to hang out with them. I never did next-gen fanfic that I wrote down. I wrote a lot of it in my head. And that, too, was I loved that community of the Bridge crew. And I wanted to hang out with them. So I would write as a way to spend time with them.
And would you write Mary Sue's? Like, would you put yourself in the story to hang out with them? Or were they stories about them that you could just enjoy?
Sometimes they were Mary Sue's. Sometimes I was like being my favorite avatar, which was Deanna Troi.
Oh, great choices.
What's a Mary Sue?
Did you say what's a Mary Sue?
Yeah, what's a Mary Sue?
Oh.
The viewers might, people hear this phrase a lot, but they don't all know what it is.
No, totally fair.
And it originates from Star Trek.
Oh, it does.
It does. Well, yeah. First of all, what's your understanding of what a Mary? Okay, let me tell you the Star Trek origination. Star Trek used to have open submissions.
Right.
For years, even before Next Generation, they took open submissions for publishing short stories or novels, and they were pretty far along with the later TV shows before they stopped accepting open submissions for so nobody would sue them over saying, hey, you stole my idea because this thing had some remote similarity to that detail. So the original thing was that they got so many submissions that had certain type of character in them that the ones processing these submissions started referring to that certain type of character as a Mary Sue or occasionally her brother Billy Sue. So it was people processing the Star Trek stuff that got that. So what is a Mary Sue?
Yeah, a Mary Sue is putting yourself in the story, whether very blatantly or, sort of vaguely shaded. But it's, hey, here's me in this story, right? And
does it also have the connotation now of like a version of you that is like the best, shiniest version of you?
It's always had that connotation. That was part of why we're talking about getting those stories over and over. Here's this ensign who is, able to outsmart Spock or figure out the diplomatic thing instead of Picard.
Outcharm Kirk. Okay, that's what I thought.
And unfortunately, this gets overused, I think, now to be anytime there is a female character introduced who is smarter, better, or shinier than a male lead. Like, she's a Mary Sue. Like, or could she just be like a bomb-ass lady? But a really good example of, it's kind of a Mary Sue, but is us putting ourselves into therapy fanfic where we're doing therapy with our fanfic faves, and like we're doing great therapy. Like everything we're doing is hitting.
Change is happening almost like instantaneously. By the end of the session, this person is walking out feeling very healed. And like that happens sometimes in our sessions. But absolutely, like this is like the shiniest, most revised version of each of us as therapists in the Starship Therapise fanfic.
So you're placing Counselor Troi with Counselor Mary Sue.
Yes.
Who might actually know some therapeutic techniques, which Counselor Troi never did.
No.
Alexa Rice, I'm a Disney DC mashup artist. What are your thoughts on fan art as part of fan fiction writing?
We come out firmly in favor, and because you brought it up, Alexa, I'm going to share something with you from the book because in addition to doing our fanfic writing, we had our very good friend J. Salvador Ramos of Super Emo Friends fame draw fan art for us. So here is Billy Peltzer from Gremlins doing Gremlins yoga. There he is. Oh, he's all covered with gremlins.
There's all little gremlins.
And he's gotta catch all the gremlins and then gently put them in a basket. Look how great that is. And there's just a bunch of really, really cute art in here. Link doing some yoga. So yeah, we are very in favor. Oh, look at that.
This was a gift somebody, a student had a former student do this for me.
Oh,
actually, I've got a couple of other interesting things up there too. This is the one people really like.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Right, and that, I mean, it tells such a story. Right? I mean,
Yeah.
honestly,
and it's
if you know
another way to
Travis, it tells an
honor-
even better story. But
It does, and it's such a great way to honor your connection, or in this case, it was your student's way of honoring your connection, Travis, to the characters, and then their connection with you.
Or to
and
kiss up to
Batman.
the professor.
Sure, that could be a thing too, which is another way of forming a connection as you hope for a good grade.
Actually, I think she waited till the semester was over. I think she actually did that.
good boundaries.
Classy.
Or maybe I'm just rewriting it that way in my head.
Yeah.
All right. So how do you introduce this stuff to a client? They're talking about their life's problems, and you're like, hey, you remember that TV show you talked about? Let's write something. I mean, how do you introduce this with a client?
Well, for me, it's, I don't want to say it's easy because that's not what I mean, but it's very organic.
Yeah,
because
that was the word I was thinking of.
my practice is called Blue Box Counseling, which is a nod to Doctor Who. Yep, there it is. All of my advertising, my website, all my stuff says, I am a nerd. This is how I work. This is what you can expect. So that by the time someone reaches out to me to say, hey, I want to work with you, they usually want to work with me because of this. And so it takes a little bit of the pressure off of having to introduce this idea.
Sure.
But I know Larissa works at a bit of a more, is mainstream an okay word to use?
I think so. I think we're mainstream fronting, do we have an office full of sailboat photos? No, but they're sailboat adjacent.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I will, as I've established myself more and more in Chicago, I'm originally from Minneapolis, Minnesota, and I worked originally with Justine at her practice. And then when I moved here to Chicago, I had to establish myself at this new place where I work now, which is Empowered. And so now I've been here for a number of years, long enough where there's a sense of who I am and what I do, and that I bring fandom and fan stories into the therapeutic work. And so now I've started to get people who seek me out for that. But before, when I was just getting started, it was part of my spiel when someone would come in for an intake, and I would let them know a little bit about me. I would explain part of how I work is I'm going to bring in play. And part of how I bring in play is by bringing in these different fandoms. And I usually had some of my fandoms displayed as art on my walls, on my bookshelves. So hopefully this wasn't too much of a surprise, but you never know how much people are taking in the space when they first meet you. And so sometimes people were really surprised. Sometimes people were super on board. And then for folks who are a little bit more on the fence about it, something that I did early on was I was asking them what kind of fandoms they were into and would learn about that. And then I would either get into those fandoms on the side myself. My most favorite in this example would have been Suits, that I like. Of my own accord, I don't think I would have ever sat down and watched the show Suits. It's just not in one of my canonical fandoms. But I was working with some folks who were really into it. And I was like, okay, this is great. I'll watch the show. We'll talk about it in here. And it didn't just deepen how we were able to do therapeutic fan fiction, because now I knew more about their fandom. It also was a really strong way that I built rapport because I don't think anyone that they'd ever worked with had gone out and engaged in play that they were into just as a way to like expand their work in therapy. And so that became an important part of our therapeutic relationship, that I went out and I did this and I brought it in. And it was because I was excited about all fandoms and curious about them too. And that's really the thing that I found, like, even for people who don't think of themselves as being fans, if I'm curious about whatever it is that they're into, even if it's sports, which is not something I know very much about at all, but if I'm curious about it, I'm asking questions, really quickly the guard starts to drop and they get excited, because it feels fun when someone is curious and sort of into what you are into too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's there was that thing that I'd read that Riddell Hewley had written about how Yoda saved her life.
Yeah.
And it was and she'd written this thing, and I got her permission to quote her in my APA talks, and here I am doing it now, but something she wrote publicly. And she was talking about how she was in therapy, and the therapist quoted yoga. That's you. That's the therapist quoted Yoda. Yeah, Yoda. So she quoted Yoda. The do or do not, there is no try quote. And it wasn't so much the quote itself, because Hewley had heard this many times, but it was the mere fact that the therapist said that. She had this woman just quoted Yoda, or actually this woman just quoted Star Wars moment. And that right there helped her feel less alone, less alone in the things she loved. I'm older than people think I am. I saw Star Wars in the theater when it first came out, when it was just called Star Wars. It didn't have that other title till 4 years later. And the sheer success of it spoke to me. The fact that it was the #1 movie in the theaters week after week after week for months, said that, okay, I don't know who around me is into any of these things or so forth, but it says that there are plenty of people in the world who are into the things that I'm into. And so that is what Larissa was saying about help them feel like somebody else is into these things. Now, I have said you don't necessarily have to get into the same thing your client is into. You don't have to just fall in love with the TV show the client refers to, or binge Suits, or Janina with her client with Veronica Mars. That example, because Janina did fall in love with Veronica Mars.
That's a great show.
It is. It's a very good show. It's I still don't care for thing that happened at the end of the last movie, but or last series.
I'm with you.
So you know what I'm saying. It's like,
I do.
that was just writers deciding, hey, it's time to shake that up. That was writers imposing themselves on their own show. They were doing Veronica Mars fanfic with Veronica Mars on the air. No,
but they were though.
I haven't
Absolutely,
watched
they
it
were,
for exactly that reason, because I know it's not going to fit with my headcanon. So I'm like, no, I'm not even going to bother putting that in my head.
No, thank you.
After Star Wars, after Star Wars episode 7 came out, and then getting through 8 and 9, there were a number of people who said these movies seem like fanfic.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to upset anyone, but to me, that's been the best way for me to frame 7, 8, 9.
Yeah.
It's allowed me to like channel a different kind of fan generosity, because they didn't quite work for me. But if I think about them as fan fiction, then I'm able to shift to a place of, well, this is not the story I would write, but this is the story that someone else wrote, and it means a lot to them, and it really connected for some people. I can honor and hold space for that.
Yeah, you can go, it's not George's story.
No.
Imagine just like these sequels had to happen for us to retroactively feel better about the prequels. But it's these are, we're getting all kind. I've got the actual YouTube page going over here.
Do we have some chats happening?
Oh boy.
Well, it's just a lot of information about Alexa. Not just a mashup artist, but a voice talent, impersonator, live actress, singer, and live writer. So just telling
Wow.
us more about herself over there.
Very cool.
Thank you for
Hi.
sharing this, Alexa. It's like I'm
Yeah.
just kind of I know we're not responding directly on the things that you're saying that you're into here, but it's like I've been kind of interested in it.
Yeah.
So
And to speak to Alexa, I now have something in common with you. Well, Lyris and I both do. We are both now voice actors because we recorded the audiobook, and which is now available from Audible, etc. And it has been a long held dream of mine to be a voice actor, and I got to live out this dream by doing the voices of all the characters that we did our fanfic case studies with.
That's true.
And that was pretty magical.
Yeah, I resist impulses to imitate some characters when I'm quoting them. Although it's hard not to with certain characters or people. I do not do the audiobooks for my own because they're arranged. The publisher makes a deal with somebody else. It's so that's the thing about how do you even get something like this published at all?
Oh, this is a fun story, and I hope it inspires hope for people who are watching and listening. We got picked up because of a tweet.
Yes, truly. We had been working at this for over 4 years, and it was a tweet that got us picked up. Please tell the rest of the story. And this is all Justine. Justine wanted to do what she's going to describe. I was like, I'm too tired. I can't do this. Nothing's going to happen on Twitter. And boy, was I wrong.
Yeah. So twice a year, there is a Twitter contest called #PitMad, which is pitch madness, where writers can pitch their book ideas to publishers and agents via a tweet. So you pitch your book in however many characters it is now. And if an agent or a publisher likes your tweet, they want to see a full proposal. And I tweeted therapeutic fan fiction, something, 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 and got a couple of likes.
I think we got 3 total.
I think it was 1 agent, 2 publishers, or 2 agents, 1 publisher, whatever. So we sent out our full proposal. And one of those editors from North Atlantic Books, Shayna Keels, picked us up.
Yeah.
And that's how we got picked up. We had been pitching and working and hustling for the better part of 4 years, and it was a tweet.
I did not know this story.
Yep.
Wow.
Right?
I got a book deal because of a conversation in the hall at New York Comic Con.
I know.
That's a good story too.
You just
Actually, it
don't
happened
know.
twice. Now the second time I didn't do the book with that person because I already had something else in progress. But honestly, twice I had book deal opportunities come up because of conversations in the hall at New York Comic Con. Risa rocks it. Without discussing personal details, obviously, what has been your greatest success story case study with therapeutic fan fiction? Or if you don't have one that leaps in your mind, what would be a really good example of success using this stuff?
I do have one that leaps to my mind, and it's sad. So I will share it. And I'm prefacing that this is a story about grief.
Okay.
So
I have 2 funny ones that can follow it up if we need that kind of
perfect.
levity following this.
Because I mean, I also have many lighthearted ones, but this one always comes to mind because it was the most profound for me. So friends at home, if you don't want to hear the grief story and you're like, I want a beverage, now might be a good time.
Yeah.
I had a client who was dying of cancer, actively dying. And this person didn't have a faith system, didn't have a belief system for what happens after, and so was really just struggling with all the life stuff about, I'm leaving behind my family and what does that mean? And also like, what's next? What's out there? And come to find that this person, and I knew this because I asked about fandoms during the intake process, that, this person was really connected to Lord of the Rings. And I discovered how connected in this process because we were talking about, who could be a guide, who could be guiding you in this process, right? And it came up that Gandalf would just be the best guide. And one time in session, I quoted Gandalf, the death is not the end, which I can't come up with the exact quote right now, but that idea of like, death isn't the end, the veil rolls back and then it's white shores. And it gave this client permission to think outside of the box about what might be in the next life. And, it gave this person permission to fanfic the afterlife. And none of us know. No. So, what makes the story powerful is the belief. And for this person, having that afterlife fanfic really helped them come to terms with what was happening. And so that it comes to my mind because it was just such a profound thing to witness. And a way to show that, yeah, this is play, and play can be serious business.
Mm-hmm. Truly.
Yeah. But Larissa, you want to lighten things up after I talked about dying?
I mean, that was a really beautiful story, the way that you told it. And you told it with such like deftness just now that I don't even necessarily feel like we need too much lightness, because you wove that in really well. But I'll just say that talking about Baby Yoda or Baby Grogu has been something that has been such an impactful way to talk about the inner child, the child archetype for folks. And I've seen it again and again and again in so many of the people that I work with, because it often helps adults unlock this idea that even if stuff got put on you when you were really small, and you felt like your memory when you were small was that you should have been able to handle certain things, how could you? And often clients aren't able, like they're able to rationally understand that, but emotionally that doesn't feel true until they have a child avatar to think of. And Baby Grogu has been that child avatar for people again and again and again, to think about how like, no, I would never want like Grogu to lead the team. That would be inappropriate. Mando has to do that. And then like we sit there in session as they're saying this, and I just hold the silence, and I rarely have to say anything before they're like, oh my God, that was me. I was Baby Grogu. I shouldn't have had to hold things. I needed a Mando. And I'm like, yeah, you did.
Mm-hmm.
That's a great example.
Oh, thanks, Travis.
Alexis Rice it just said thanks, I guess, because we were commenting on her interest and so forth. Any last thought while we have just a couple minutes left? Something you haven't gotten to say?
I mean, I touched on it a little bit, but I'll say it more succinctly, which is, Mr. Rogers told us that play was the work of children, and I believe that play is the meaning making of adults. And so, folks at home, if you're thinking, well, I can't play, that's not real, or that's not, that wouldn't be therapeutic, or first off, I would say, I mean, you probably don't think that because you're watching a Wizard World stream, but but I don't know, maybe is, these couple of examples that Larissa and I talked about. I mean, fandom really helps us get through things. And it gets to be light and playful, even in, you know what it is? It's like the light of Arendelle. It's when all other lights go out, the light in dark places. Mm-hmm. We have this play, even when it's dark.
And on that note, where can people find you online? Where are you? And where can they find the book?
Yes. The book is available wherever books are sold. And I know that might seem weird. People keep asking me, did you self-publish? No. Look,
No.
that says someone published us from a tweet. Keep tweeting,
I like to think it's because like our book is just so much fun that people are like, surely like you couldn't get like an actual serious publisher to publish you, but no. Indeed we did. And you can get it wherever books are sold in person or online. You can go to penguinrandomhouse.com, but you don't have to. You can go to Amazon or your local bookstore or bookshop.org or thriftbooks.com. We're out there.
Really, anywhere. And then if you want to follow me on social media, I'm on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Mind Body Fandom, because I take a holistic approach to healing, mind, body, and fandom.
And the best place to find me is going to be at our Starship Therapise handle. So starshiptherapise.com is our website where you can find info about the book, our podcasts, our appearances that will be upcoming, both virtual and hopefully pretty soon here in person. You can find us on Instagram, starship_therapise.com.
No, there's no .com. That's
no .com.
Starship
_ And then if you want to find me, you can find me on Twitter at SpocksAllEars, where I like to repost photos of animals and talk about my thoughts on the Dragon Age video game series.
One thing did occur to me worth pointing out. That letter right there,
yes,
spelled with an S, as in Starship Enterprise.
Yes.
Yeah. Not a Z.
Yes.
Not a Z.
Good.
Even
note.
if it is winning a prize inside. All right. Well, thank you both. And thank all of you out there who've joined us today and offered the comments and questions. We really appreciate it. And until next time, bye.